Hey guys, I'm just making a quick video on this guy in front of us here, and I've had this for a while, and I was kind of throwing around the idea of doing a short video on it, but you know, recently with the announcement of the NES Wii that people are not Wii, the NES Mini that everyone seems to be collectively losing their minds about, I thought I'd do one of this flashback consoles, since it's basically the same thing. Now generally I don't really like these things. I don't like clone consoles. I'm kind of a purist. I've probably said that before in my videos. I like using the actual hardware. I do not like the flashback units, whether it be Atari, whether it be the Intellivision or ColecoVision or even the NES Mini. I'm not excited about. That's me. It's coming from the viewpoint of someone that's a collector and someone that's a little bit tech savvy, and you know, I just prefer the real hardware, and I have the real hardware. I see the appeal, you know, to the average consumer that hasn't touched one of these things in 30 some odd years or has no idea what an emulator is. They're not for me. But I kind of came across this thing. It was at a Goodwill, and I went to a couple Goodwills that day, and I had found nothing. And I came across this on the shelf, and I was like, I kind of want to get something. And I did a little research on it, and it actually, as it turns out, the Flashback 2, this thing's actually more of a hardware revision of the Atari rather than like a clone. The big difference with the Flashback 2 is what it really is. It's more of a revision of the original Atari hardware rather than, you know, full-blown clone with some kind of emulating, you know, chips inside, or, you know, Atari on a chip or something like that. But it's really like, as far as Wikipedia says, it's a single chip version, a reproduction of the TIA chip used in the original VCS or video computer system, as they called it. So apparently, supposedly, this thing can run Atari software, 2600 software, pretty much 100% accuracy, even to the point that you can mod this thing with a cartridge slot. Now, this doesn't come with a cartridge slot, like all of the, or most of the flashback type systems. It just comes with games on board. You can't really add more games to it. But this one is so close to the original that you can actually mod this thing with a cartridge slot to accept actual 2600 cartridges. So I mean, in my mind, that makes this thing really more of a hardware revision than a clone. So that's why it kind of interested me in that sense. So I don't think the cart mod is worth it, from what I read, just because it's cheaper, easier just to get an actual Atari 2600. But it can be done, and supposedly it's not 100%. There are some games that don't work, but a lot of games will work with a cart slot modded in, which is very interesting. So the box itself is very kind of reminiscent of those video game boxes from the 70s and 80s. You got the little panels with games and people having, you know, ridiculous amounts of fun that they'll probably never have with a 2600. But let's open it up. So here we go. Got a little power supply. Here's the system itself. Obviously, they replaced the switches with buttons. The controllers, though, are almost identical. Let me get, this is an actual, so this here is an actual 2600 controller, and this here is the reproduction one, and they're pretty much, the reproduction ones are a little bit smaller, like tiniest bit, and it has this Atari logo, but it feels the same, and they're interchangeable. They use the same connection. You can use an original controller with the flashback. You can use the repo controllers with an original model 2600. So they're pretty much identical, which is nice. They didn't try something gimmicky and stupid. It just kind of looks like a miniature 2600. It's got the fake wood grain, not the same fake quality as the original. It's pretty much the same on the back. You got your, you got your controller ports. There's for the power, and you even have a little switch for color and black and white, which is interesting. And it does composite. Now you can mod the original 2600 to do composite or S-video and even RGB these days, but without modding, I believe this is the only way you can get composite on sort of original hardware. So here's an original 2600, one of them. This is a 6 switcher. Don't think, let me, if it will zoom out. So yeah, it's quite a bit smaller. But as you can see, they're pretty much the same on the back here. Sorry if the lighting isn't that great, but yeah. So that's nice. Okay, so the Flashback 2, it does come with 40 built-in games, and you know, you've got some classics in there. You have Adventure and Haunted House and Asteroids and things like that, but you also have a couple homebrews, and you know, homebrews like Atari Climber. You also have games that were only released in Europe, like Fatal Run, and you even have some prototypes like Frog Pond. I think Wizard is another unreleased prototype. Yeah. So, you know, it even has a couple exclusive, like Asteroids Deluxe, which is an exclusive, Arcade Pong, which is exclusive to the Flashback 2, I believe. So, now they did come out a little later with the Flashback 2 Plus. Now, I still prefer the original Flashback 2. The 2 and the 2 Plus are pretty much the same. The only difference is they got rid of a couple games on the Flashback 2. I can't recall exactly what those games were, but they replaced them with a couple, like a new sports category and some sports games. Now, I care about electronic sports games about as much as I do about real sports, which is pretty much zero. So I don't care about the sports games. I would actually prefer some of the other non-sports games that they took out in the Plus 2. So that's why I still prefer the just the regular Flashback 2. So you can go through these categories with the joystick. We have Adventure Territory, Arcade Favorites, Space Station, Skill and Action Zone, and then that's it. And let's say you're over like Arcade Favorites, you just hit the fire button and then you have your selections down here. So let's do something, I think Asteroids Deluxe it says was an exclusive. And sorry, I got mind freeze there. I wasn't thinking, didn't have much to say there, but yeah, there's a lot of good, interesting Atari games on here. We got our classic Pitfall, of course, and yep, it's Pitfall, all right. It looks good, it plays good. I haven't found any issues with how it runs, so that's really a plus. Picture's decent, better than RF. Let's try another game here. Let's try Aqua Adventure, which it was kind of like recommended on Classic Game Room, and I think that was an unreleased prototype. So let's try that one. Nope. Thing is, you have to go all the way down to get back to main menu. I believe it's in Skill and Action. Yeah, here it is. So this is kind of an interesting game where, as far as I can tell, you're trying to get down and get that little weird looking Atlantis type looking thing without getting killed by missiles or torpedoes and fish. And then you got to make your way back up. It's actually kind of fun for an Atari 2600 game. And then that hippie mermaid, and then you get to stage 2, and it gets a little bit deeper and harder. So now there's another level down there. See? Seahorses, and you can't touch the sides. So that's an interesting game that's on this thing that was previously an unreleased prototype. And last, I think we'll just do Caverns of Mars. I think Caverns of Mars is a game that got removed in the Flashback 2 Plus, I believe. Well, interesting kind of game. Actually got some scrolling going on. Or at least some kind of simulated scrolling. Oh, I thought that was... Fooled me, I just thought that was a fuel icon, but I guess you have to blow it up and not actually capture it or whatever. I think I should probably do an episode. Maybe I should do an episode just on the games on this thing, or just some Atari 2600 games in general. Although for that video, I'd have to do like direct capture because probably isn't coming out the best just pointing at the screen. But I figured for this video. But anyways, yeah, that's just a quick look at the Flashback 2. If you see one cheap, yeah, I mean, you might want to pick it up. It's no replacement for an actual 2600. But it does a decent job, and like I said, it really feels more like a hardware revision with built-in games, you know, rather than a clone system. So that's kind of like why I kind of give it a thumbs up. So thank you for watching. I appreciate it. If you like this kind of video, you know, subscribe. But thank you again for watching. I appreciate the views.